With roll call, Jason, you're online? We can't hear you.
I'm online.
And we have, in the room, we have Claire, Jenny, Margaret, and of course, Linda and Logan. And Ken is going to try to join remotely. So the first item of business is the proposed local law to clarify section 325.17. So last meeting, we talked about this. I circulated what had been proposed and rejected in 2025, which used data from I believe it was from 2015. And then since then, Donna Strites had submitted a version which was using data from a report in 2010, which showed usage in 2009, which is closer temporally to 2011. It also was at the time when the dock was probably being fully used, whereas the 2015 data was Colors that had taken over the dock shortly before then, and their usage was considerably lower than the usage in the data from the 2010 study. So where we left it was that we would keep it in committee. Hi, are you, oh, you in, Ken? Yeah, he is. So where we left it was.
Yeah, I'm connected. I'm connected.
Okay, great. So where we left it was, we're going to keep it in committee. Since then, Donna has submitted a communication to us. There was discussion around whether or not annual data should be used or whether it should be daily/weekly data and so forth. So Donna, I think you wanted to speak to the committee?
Sure. Thank you. Does anyone need any paper handouts? I have copies. Everyone all set?
I have.
I'll take one. Okay, so this was going to use on the side.
This is the memorandum. It was an email.
Are you okay? I have it on from me. And Margaret, you're me.
Mhm.
Would you like one?
Sorry?
Okay, thank you so much for having me back again. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about this. So I'd like to focus my comments on the April 6th memo that I sent to the committee and the rationale for using annual tonnage and truck trips rather than daily or hourly. So the limits that are included in the proposed resolution to clarify the city code were derived by data in the 2010 Creighton Manning traffic study. And the purpose of that study was to evaluate potential traffic impact using the old rail bed from the quarry to the dock to transport aggregate, okay? And that study used a trip generation analysis, which is a standard method in the industry used for estimating vehicle trips to assess roadway capacity. It's appropriate for traffic planning, but it's not designed to measure or regulate the scale of industrial activity. The trip generation relies on assumptions such as peak hour conditions and counts vehicle movements over short intervals. It does not measure the total material that's handled. Now, the study also cited some facts regarding the volume of aggregate in 2009, specifically 148,000 tons and 27.5 tons per truckload. Now, why annual tonnage and truck trips? So they reflect actual operations because trucks are the sole means of transporting the aggregate to the dock, and the total truck activity corresponds to the material volume. The annual limits rely on documented throughput for the year rather than assumptions. And they're more accurate for enforcing the measure of scale. Daily or hourly limits are not recommended because the day-to-day operations vary widely based on numerous factors: market demand, weather, barge availability, workforce capacity, hours of operations, etc. On page 2, in terms of regulation considerations, annual limits regulate how much material is processed over time. There's a fixed ceiling, and that prevents incremental expansion regardless of how the activity is distributed throughout the year, day to day. Annual metrics are simple to check. They provide clear rules and allow for normal ups and downs in the operation by the dock operator. So they don't have to micromanage within a certain daily or hourly limit day to day. So if the goal is to prevent expansion, annual limits are the only mechanism that works. Daily and hourly limits may help to manage traffic, but they cannot cap growth. Now, I've included as attachment A to that memo an excerpt from the January 2010 Creighton Manning traffic study. This was on page 2, trip generation. It was a section that Jason had focused on in the last meeting. And for ease of reference, I highlighted in yellow the assumptions that were used and or the purpose of the study. And I highlighted in green the facts, specifically those facts that were used to derive the annual limits that are in the proposed resolution. So the 27.5 tons per truck and 148,000 tons per year, which was the 2009 activity. Any questions on the memo? Anyone? Go ahead.
I'm assuming that currently there is no weigh station at Colorusso for them to weigh their trucks every day. So how are they going to know how much tonnage they have just based on truck,
So
the number of trucks?
So the proposal has 2 limits. One is 148,000 tons
Okay,
per year,
yeah,
and the other is the number of round trips,
okay,
5,000 and some round trips. So the trips can easily be measured by the load tickets. And I'm.
There is a, Jason, isn't there a way, still? I remember discussing this a while back.
They might have something at the quarry.
I believe they
to
do.
measure.
they
I-
do?
I do believe they
they have-
weigh these trucks at the quarry. They have to charge the
because I
customers.
remember
for them.
this, I remember this came up in discussion a couple of years ago.
Then why don't we have accurate data that's more current?
Well, it's not about what's current,
Hasn't
what the
been a
code,
Study done since 2010.
what the codes, it's not about what's current, what the code said was whatever was in effect, and Jason has a good perspective on this, but the code is basically the usage that was in effect in 2011.
No, I understand that,
It's
but
not about what's happening today or not, it's clarification of what does that mean, because there's no guidelines for any implementation of what that means. There's no quantification of what was in effect in 2011, that's what we're trying to establish.
don't they have record of
No.
what 2011 was?
The closest
Oh,
thing,
because they
No.
sold and then,
and they didn't have it in
Oh,
2011.
got
ONG.
The closest thing we have in time to 2011 is a 2010 study that reported the
no,
2000.
I understand all
That's
of
the
that.
closest thing
I
we have, that's
understand
why I
all
don't
of
know
that.
right.
Yes, so for 2011, if you recall at our last meeting.
Yes, I remembered it.
Colorusso had contacted ONG at the planning board's request to determine the activity in 2011. ONG wrote back in an email to say,
So
we don't have it, we destroyed it in 2019 due to our records retention policy. So much time has happened.
Jason, do you have any questions?
No, I think it was very clear what she said. I don't have a question.
So what I would like to propose here,
Margaret, I'm sorry to interrupt. I had one other thing I wanted to review just briefly. That was the other attachment that I distributed.
this one,
Yes.
okay,
Okay, So this chart 3 is an excerpt from the 2020 Craig Manning truck study that was commissioned by Acol Russo and Sons. And the top part of the page is text that I added. The bottom part of the page is a copy from the actual study, chart 3, loads delivered. So that study included for the period of mid-2014, when Colarusso bought the dock, through 2019, charts that showed loads delivered each year, year by year. And this is the 2015 data. And the chart at the bottom, on the left axis, it shows the one-way trips in 20 trip increments. And then across the bottom, it shows the days of the year in 3-day increments. And then the lines represent every day the trucks were running to the dock. So what this tells us is that the annual truckloads in 2015 were 2,730. A truckload means a round trip, one round trip. And the annual truck trips is double that, 5,460. That's to and from the dock. The number of operating days was 77, so they only ran trucks 77 days that year out of a potential 365. Because there was no permit, they weren't limited to lower than that. The daily loads ranged from 0 on days that they didn't run trucks to up to 125 was the highest. And the average trips per days hauled was 35.5 round trips. And I just took the 2,730 loads divided by 77 days to derive that number. Now, if, for example, a daily limit were imposed, let's say 125 round trips, and that's the red line on the chart below, 125 was the highest number of loads. It happened on one day in 2015. So let's say there's a proposed 125 daily limit. The dock owner still has an opportunity, if they comply, they can comply every day and still be comply, but still increase their overall operations up to over 30,000 round trips annually. Worst case scenario, that would be 125 round trips times 250 operating days of the year. The 250 days comes from the haul road permit that allows them to operate up to 250 days a year currently. So that's 11 times the 2015 volume. So another way of looking at this visually is the red line, which I drew again, and it's at the 125 trip limit. The blank space below that is growth opportunity for the dock operator. The dock operator could run trucks 250 days a year up to that red line. Okay, so this is opportunity, and a daily limit would not limit that.
So I would like to put a counter argument out there. Just this. The only thing that we are focused on is trying to determine whether or not it is possible to define what the usage was in 2011 and whether or not we want to clarify the code. Not just in the event that this comes back to the planning board again, so that there is something there for them to refer to, or in the event that in the future, should there be another operator, that the code is clear as to what this means. So all of this to me is irrelevant. The only thing that I care about is, can we clearly define, or as close as possible define to everyone's satisfaction, what the usage was in 2011, that the code said you are to stay within this limit. So I think that we should focus on that rather than what could the volume be based upon the number of trips that the haul road is a separate issue. That's already done, that's been approved, the planning board has authorized it. So I prefer not to get distracted by that. The other thing I want to say is that having looked at all of this since our last meeting and reviewed the communications that we had from Colarusso, I would like to bring this, both the proposed limits from the 2026 that Donald Stites has put together. I'd like to bring this to the full council because I think it would be better. It's a matter of some significance. And I think that the full council needs to evaluate, number one, do we want to go into clarifying the code? And if so, how do we want to pursue it? And so I think it would be better for us to take this to the informal, give them the materials that we have so far. And then have our attorney advise us as a full council on the best way to proceed. That is my recommendation. And Claire, you are okay with that? Jenny?
Mhm.
Jason?
Yes, I'm okay with that.
Okay, so what we're going to do for this evening, thank you very much.
Sure.
We have these documents, we have the memo, we have what we had from last month. I'll put a package together for the informal. And then as full council, we can review it. And again, we need to look at a couple of different things. Are we going to change the code to clarify it? If so, why? And do we have defensible information that we can put out there that gets at what the level of activity was? And are we interpreting what's in the code correctly to make that change? And then Mr. Dow can advise us as a council as to what our best approach is. Good?
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you very much. So, anything else from the public? Okay. On to new business. EV charger contract renewal. So we have, EV chargers, multiple locations. The contract for maintaining those chargers has expired. You can see on the document on this page here, you can see the locations of the various chargers. The proposal for a 5-year contract, which includes a warranty, which is very important, is 17,000. We will need to do this. We will need a budget amendment. The warranty piece is important because a couple of these chargers are currently not working. And the cost to have them serviced or repaired is in the thousands. So having a contract for 5 years that comes out to less than 3,000 a year is definitely something for us to consider. So this will be going, this came from CAC, from Rich Rolo. This will be going to the informal with a resolution to go into this, and between now and then, we'll work with Heather to identify whatever budget amendment we need to do to put this in place. Anybody got any questions? Jason?
Yeah, is it budgeted?
Oh,
Like,
that's why we need a budget amendment.
but
So
we previously have paid a contract, like they've been in. They've been installed a while, so have we been, this is a renewal.
We had a contract and Heather researched it. We had a contract and the contract expired. And in the budget that was just done, this was not budgeted for. The interesting thing is that we charge for the use of the stations. That electric bill goes through DPW. And basically what we are charging has been breaking even in terms of covering the cost, both of the electric and, as I understood it, when we have the contract, to cover the cost of the contract. So one of the things between now and the informal on the financial side that we need to look at is what will we be generating in revenue from the charging, because it needs to more than pay for the cost of the electricity.
And the contract.
That's what I'm saying. That's why it needs to pay for more than the cost of the electricity. And Rich has put together a schedule from other municipalities based upon usage by kilowatt hour.
And then, so in the meantime, I assume that would get set up for the next year, or is there a budget line item for the income?
There was, yes, there is a line item and there was a line item for the contract, but for some reason, last year, this simply fell through the cracks.
Right, but if you're creating if you're creating a budget transfer, what account is it coming from at this time?
It's already, those lines are already there, but nothing was budgeted for, so the lines exist.
Okay. So you know where you're transferring from.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
The lines exist, but the contract lapsed. And now we need to renew it. And there is a
Sounds
line, but there is a line for the revenue coming in from the electricity usage, the fees. And there is a calculation of how much is being utilized. So
Okay.
the infrastructure, if you will, on the budget side is there. It's just that this lapsed.
But it looks like this is a prepay, so there may be some cash flow issue of the fees not coming
No,
in.
it's actually, no, it's not. You pay yearly, so you don't pay 17,000 up front. It would be.
Oh, it says
that's-
it. It says it has the word prepaid. That's where I got that from. 5-year prepaid is what it says on the quotation
Well,
page.
when I met with Rich, he said that they were going to accept a yearly payment.
Okay.
It's 5
Margaret?
prepaid. Yeah,
Is this
Yes,
coming
go
out of is this coming out of unappropriated fund balance, or is it coming out of another budgeted line?
sorry, who's speaking?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
Ken, I
Ken.
can't answer that off the top of my head. I'll have to go back to Heather. Because I discussed it with her this afternoon and I know that there are budget lines for this, but that funds were not put into the budget for the 2026 year.
She says there's
But
a
I
place,
need-
it's coming from a specific place. Okay.
Yeah, I need to go back and get more budget detail, which I will do between now and the informal. Because we need to
Okay.
work on what kind of budget amendment we would have to make to do this.
Okay.
Should we make sure that the contract is totally clear on that
Oh,
we're
yeah.
paying by year?
Yeah. So we need to clarify, payment schedule. So between now and, but in principle, everybody's okay with us renewing this and having a warranty on those. The
Yes.
cost of repair for each unit, is prohibitive. So, that having a warranty is really important. Okay, so, Rich and I will work on making sure we have something for the informal with all of those details worked out. Any comments from the public? No, okay. Next item, fairly straightforward. This will be going to the informal and then to the formal. This is the Hudson Paddles. Operating, as most of you know, they have been operating at Oakdale and also at the riverfront for a number of years. And this is authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with them for this season. Any questions? I believe the contract is the same as, they have not modified the contract, it's the same it has been in the past. Any questions?
Have they modified their fees?
I do not believe that the fees have changed.
Okay.
Are we good with this going to informal?
Yes.
Next item is procurement. So, gave you a couple of things here. One of which is our, policy. And, the one that has the extract from the code. Looks like this, 1122. So this goes into, if you look at C, shall apply to all purchase contracts, both those involving expenditure over 20,000. It references general municipal law, but it also references our policy. And the actual thresholds this has not been updated in 20 years, our policy. The policy requires 3 bids, for amounts let me see. All purchases of supplies or equipment with, that exceed 10 in the fiscal year or public works of 20, shall be bid in accordance with the provisions of section 103 of general municipal law. Well, the thing is that general municipal law currently has thresholds for the bid process. Public works is 35,000 and, purchase contracts is 20,000. So what we need to do here is two things. And I will bring this to the informal, update the code so that it references that for, contracts, for, contracts on, public works and, purchase contracts that are addressed under, the municipal GML 103, we will follow GML 103. And then that way, if that gets updated to 40,000 or 25,000, et cetera, we don't need to revise this and we will simply follow GML. I also want to go back to the actual policy itself so that we put language in here to address things that are below those thresholds as to what our procedures are. So currently, for example, we have very low thresholds for what requires signatures from 2 members of the BEA. So there are a couple of things like that that we could clean up, because this, again, this policy has not been updated in 20 years. So we will update this to reflect, you know, more reasonable approach and do it as a resolution so that if we need to tweak or to increase the thresholds for the things that fall below the GML, we can do it fairly easily without having to go into local laws. So that I will be bringing to the informal. On at our next meeting, you will see updated code and an updated policy. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, next item is parking, and before we talk about what you have prepared, Jenny, I have a couple of other things I want to mention that relate to parking.
Okay.
Collection. This is T2.
Mhm.
So, again, we will have at the informal a resolution relating to, entering into a contract, addendum, collection services addendum with T2. This is, a process whereby, T2 will do the collections, in prior to our new system. A notification was sent after, if you didn't pay within a month, you got one notification, but you didn't get any more.
Mhm.
T2 will do collections and will pursue things. They'll go back a couple of years and will actually collect. There is no cost to us in that the individual who has received the fine, they will pay the fine that is due to the city. And T2 then will keep the fee for the collections. So you have both the scope of work and the collections addendum. Any questions on this? Again, I would have a resolution relating to this. The other item
Margaret?
that I sent, yes,
Does is this specific to parking collections or is it
Yes,
broader
yeah,
than
yeah.
that in the city?
no, it's specific to parking. It's parking fines.
Yeah,
T2
okay.
is the company that has all
Yeah.
the software around.
Yeah.
Or-
It's specific to parking.
I'm sorry, Mark, did you say they're gonna do back collections?
They can go
Yes.
back, yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it is only parking. The next item, and it's still clarifying some items on this. We need to finalize a contract with Park Mobile. They had come back, this is the entity that charges 60 cents per transaction. And they had come back, particularly with regard to the Amtrak lot, where the parking can be long-term. And they are the merchant of record. And so they have to pay fees, banking fees. And so for somebody who is going to be parking for 10 days or 20 days or whatever, 60 cents was insufficient to cover the actual fees. So what's currently under discussion, and hopefully will be, through legal, through, Andy's office and the mayor's office, is a proposal to have a 60 cent minimum for the lower end, cap, for the lower end, fees, so you park on one of the lots, whatever, it's 60 cents. I believe that if, what we're discussing right now is that any parking event that is $5 or less would not exceed the 60 cent transaction fee. And then there would be a 12% variable once you exceed the $5 with a cap of $7.50, which would apply to parking. We would keep the parking limit at Amtrak at 30 days. So maximum parking will be 30 days with a cap of $7.50. The final details of this contract, I don't have yet.
Okay.
But I just wanted to make you aware of this. Hopefully we will have this at the informal. This is what's being worked on right now. Jason, questions on this?
Yeah, is $5, what's the maximum a day could be? Either at the Amtrak lot or on, or
Well,
somewhere else in the city?
It's $10 at the Amtrak lot. So if you're going to be parked, I think it's $10 right now, right?
I think so.
I
It's
think so.
$10 a day.
So if if your parking
And
event is $10, once you hit the $5 threshold, you're going to be hit with a 12% fee, but it's going to be capped at $7.50.
Yeah, I guess
So,
where my mind is going is that if they're looking for this higher fee on longer terms, can we get a lower fee on an hour? Because that's, I think that I've heard that a lot about people parking for an hour. The 60 cents is a big portion. Or even now, I guess we're doing 30 minutes. Or I mean, I was either thinking about, make the 60 cents last a day, or then it popped into my head, can we reduce that fee for somebody who only parks 30 minutes or an hour?
You can't. There's two fees, actually. They've combined it into one, but there's two fees. There's the fee that is related to connecting to the cloud, and then there's the fee from the credit card company. And there's also two things going on here. So there's T2 handles the text to pay, but this is Park Mobile and they are a different entity. So, and then there's also the kiosks. So once the kiosks are in place, you can pay just whatever the fee for 30 minutes is or an hour and not have to pay any of these fees. Because
I
you'd be paying cash or quarters. So
Jenny, what do you think about the minimum instead of being $5 being $10? I mean,
Say
or
it
are we
again?
just over a barrel and whatever they say we have to do?
forever a barrel, to be honest with you, because they are setting the rules. We can negotiate with them, and I think we have, but I don't think that it's their standard thing. And it's, this particular company is used all over the United States and Canada, and I think Puerto Rico. So,
I mean, I can bring that up, Jason. I can make that comment to Andy. But I was in some conversations with them and I brought up the same issue, that the 60 cent fee seemed very high to me. And they explained pretty much what Jenny just explained.
Yeah.
That there's a certain cost to them for actually, there's a minimum cost to them for actually processing the event and the merchant fee and so on. But they did get the point that initially they, believe me, they wanted considerably more than what is now in the contract. But now they're looking at this 12% with a cap, which is important, particularly for the long term. And bear in mind that most of their activity is at the Amtrak lot.
yeah.
So the long-term parking is really where most of their activity occurs. And so having a cap of $7.50 on a 30-day stay that would be very good.
I
Said 7:15, 30 days time.
Yes,
Perfect.
that's it, only at that.
Right, but like, if you're gonna park at the Amtrak for
Yeah.
30 days, that's one event.
But isn't there a
So,
kiosk at the Amtrak? And if we've, what Jenny just said about paying at kiosks probably doesn't apply there because you're still gonna get the,
Not
So-
really, no. And that the Park Mobile has been in place there since the inception, like.
Right.
So people are really familiar with the app there. They don't like it, but they're familiar.
Alright, so, more to come on this once I hear from, where it stands with Andy. Okay, so let me put my Park Mobile stuff here. Then we have the materials that Jenny sent us. You like that I put it all under parking? It's a small word.
It's a big word. I didn't realize 2-3 years ago that right now I would know so much about parking. Never in my life did I think I'd know this much about parking. But, so as everybody probably knows, in 2019, we did away with minimum parking here. And, I understand the reasons for that, and you guys probably do too. You don't want to put the burden, especially on people who are developing housing, to build parking, and have that, make the price of housing costs creep up. And you also we don't, as a city, I'm sure none of us want, our environment, to be messed up in any way, when it comes to, water runoff and so forth. And just heating up the planet with more silly parking lots. But the problem I see is that there are certain places in town that have, a lot of density, and that density with more development, the parking and the traffic are going to become really problematic. And I'm trying to find a solution. And I think if we write laws in a very mindful way, we can work around the reasons for not having parking minimums. The only reason to put parking minimums back for me would be to have something that a lot of other communities have, and that is something with a really unfortunate acronym called PILUP, which is payment in lieu of parking. So if a developer could not build parking, either because there's no room for it, or they don't want to, then they could pay a fee, and then we could put that in a fund where we either put that toward transportation, or we put it toward building parking that's decked, maybe a garage. That's my thinking.
So in the research that you did
Mm-hmm.
for the municipalities that have this, have they had it in place long enough? Like has it been in place long enough for them to be able to say, this is what we were able to accomplish?
Port Jefferson, definitely, and actually, they are similar to us in a few ways. They're similar in population, they're similar in density per square mile. The one place that they are not similar to us is in the median household income. But other than that, and they have had it in place, and I think they are using it in the same ways that I was thinking. So for
So have they been, would you be able to report to us on what some of these municipalities have, like, has Port Jeff been able to build a parking garage and, like, the other thing about Port Jeff is that's where the ferry is.
yeah,
So,
so they do have transportation, which we do not have.
right. It is a truly very dense little village.
Yeah.
I
But
think,
we're denser, believe it or not.
per square mile. But where they have parking issues is a very tight core.
Yeah, and they've actually named that. They've named in their code. They've named the waterfront, there's two sections that they've named. They've named their downtown two sections. And those places are the places they're most concerned about,
Right.
from my understanding.
Yes, that's correct.
So, yeah, but I've pointed out two spaces that I think are really under stress right now with parking in the document, so.
So, yeah, Washington and Prospect.
Mhm.
We've got 3 spaces.
Well, yeah, and then the waterfront and surrounding
Yeah.
area, and then the Front Street and Warren.
So what are our next steps here?
Well, I was hoping that, well, maybe we could bring this to the whole council. And see if anyone has any ideas. I mean, or we could develop something that keeps in mind the reasons why we didn't want parking minimums, but also maybe develop something that can kind of mitigate those reasons.
I have a thought, not a concrete idea, but when I've heard the complaints of residents, specifically around a specific project in our ward. And as we were talking about, like, short-term rentals, I know they're not the same issue, but, thinking of a comprehensive study or, like a pipeline tracker that can have us envision all of these things at once. I know the planning board takes some of those things into consideration, but I think if the council were to ask of the planning board, if the projects that were online, or that, if the projects that are up for approval were to come online, what does that do to both the parking in the city of Hudson, congestion in the city of Hudson? What is the saturation of certain kinds of housing if developments come to fruition online? I think that parking, housing stock, what is available to be built on, like, those 3 things can happen simultaneously in some type of, visioning document. I don't know what it would be called, but I think that we keep asking the same question. We keep asking the same questions when it comes to development and, after things are approved. we
This is
want-
kind of like, this is a bit like the, dock situation. Where the planning board is, like, the code is just saying X,
Yeah,
but the planning board is given no guide rates.
Right, so we
And
need the right
when
code.
the parking minimums were removed, the idea was, well, the planning board will take that as part of what they have to evaluate when they're looking at a project. But then they weren't given any guidelines as to what would be reasonable, what is not reasonable.
And now we have certain situations.
So I think, so one of the things I want to highlight for everyone, because I remember when you brought this up last year, and you brought up the Red Hook one, which was very interesting. Red Hook actually has parking maximums.
Yep.
And what they did, because part of what Jenny alluded to, in order to preserve the character of the village, they did not want developments to turn into developments with huge parking lots. So they put in place, maximums and also, landscaping requirements and so forth, so that the character of the village would not be, harmed by developments that would also then have huge parking lots in front.
Most of what I've read so far regarding code and parking minimums or maximums, they all have something built in about landscaping that hides the parking lot, that also shades the parking lot so it's not hot. And permeable or non-permeable surfaces, permeable surfaces,
Right.
asking for those. It's about what we write, whether it works or not.
Yeah, we could potentially come up with, go back to what was there before. Some of the things that were unreasonable were requirements, and the new development is its own thing, but there were requirements around restaurants and the number of spaces they had to have for tabletop. Which were completely unrealistic in an urban restaurant area. And so the zoning board was constantly giving waivers on these things because it was not actionable.
Yeah.
And so I think if we went back to what was there before and see what about it was unreasonable and
Yeah.
remove that and then see, was there anything in here that would provide some reasonable guardrails and maybe bring some of that back?
I think that's a good idea. It's a good starting place. And like I said, it might help put money toward things that we really need, like maybe some transportation.
In recent past, has there been specific support that the planning board has asked of the council around this? Because I know that they've, like, there's studies that are asked to be done as a part of the planning process. Are
But
those
we're-
about
the planning-
parking space utilization or just parking space creation?
So the planning board is independent and the council cannot
Right,
actually interfere with anything, so.
can't interfere, but,
Right, but that kind of dialogue doesn't usually happen.
okay,
So that's why it's important to put things in place when something's not before the planning board.
okay.
Say, here are some
Here are the guidelines.
guidelines. And then they have, it's kind of like the zoning folks, they have something there that they can work within. But when they're just given nothing, it makes their job very hard.
Also, a lot of those studies, they're being done by the developers themselves, so
Right.
they can be manipulated a little bit, and it would just be nice for us to have some kind of guidance.
Yeah, and it's also making me like recategorize parking as a quality of life issue.
It is.
Based on the amount of people that have complained over one specific project and, just thinking about the city, like finding a way for the city to have say over it, similar to what the Housing Trust Board is doing with home renovations. Like, these are approved folks to do the study. These are people that we as the city trust to do this study in a way that meets whatever guidelines we set as recommendations. I know that they have the right to secure whoever they want to as developers, but maybe that is that some language that we can think about including in some way, shape, or form.
Jason, your
Margaret?
thoughts? Yeah,
I do. What I've watched the planning board struggle with is mostly residential developments. The boulevards was an example. They kind of used SECRA to show the impact on the neighborhoods because the streets adjacent were very narrow, and parking on one side. And in the end, they were able to work with the developer and got it up to one lot per unit. I think
One
a
space
tough
per unit.
one space per unit is what it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. And I think that in general, I feel like residential is could be treated differently.
Absolutely.
No parking minimums for a restaurant. I kind of agree with you, and maybe, retail stores and things like that, because we have that, we have accommodations for that, and people come and go. But it's about people, place to park their car overnight.
Yep.
And the problems that causes, and making a lot of assumptions for people that, well, they don't need as many cars. But when I've looked at job data, the people go in and out of Hudson People come to work in Hudson, and people in Hudson leave Hudson to go work other places. And so I specifically want to think about how residential developments are handled. And I guess hotels or maybe even a separate item because they have a similar issue, but not exactly the same. I think that the HHA development is going to have a problem. We're going from, I think, 85 families at the moment to possibly 250. And I think the mix is going to change, and maybe the car ownership is going to change, but they based the current occupants of Bliss Towers, I think they said had 60% of them had cars and 40% didn't. And the new mix may not be the same. And so the planning board doesn't have much tooth to do much about that. And I heard what Jenny said about wishing we didn't have as many cars and heat islands and but where people live, they need to get to their jobs. And I met with at NICOM. I talked to the Middletown mayor, and they did developments with did developments with one space per unit. And I think he said Kingston was doing it with none, and they hadn't finished yet. And he was the Middletown mayor was very concerned about how they're going to survive with that.
Yeah, I've seen it's all over the place because thinking around this has changed so much within the last 10 years that some communities it's 0.5, so half a space per unit. Some it's 1.5 per unit. So it's kind of all over the place, and this is evolving. And I think in our case, because we are such a special and very unique place that it's a very dense population. There's a dense community. There's not a lot of land to build on. There's not a lot of space for parking lots, first of all.
And there will never be
Yeah.
public transportation that is adequate, in a truly urban area where you can actually rely on public transportation to get to work and to get to do your grocery shopping. That's not
Right.
gonna happen.
No, but what I have always been thinking about is if we built a decked parking situation in one end of town or the other, where there aren't a lot of homes around it, so it's not blocking anyone's view, it's not a mess for anyone, on land that we own as a city, and that we have this fund that we can rely on, perhaps one day in my fairy tale land, I'd love to see a little trolley, like a little EV trolley that takes you from municipal lot to municipal lot. You park your car there, it stays there. You're not screwing up on street parking. You're not hurting people who live in a neighborhood and are used to parking in front of their house. That these things are a way.
So.
Well, I think when you said even half a lot, half a space per unit is not nothing.
No,
I
it's
think
not.
I think there's a minimum somewhere between half a space and one space per residential unit in a new development. I think.
So I think what we need to do is, who would like to go back to what it was and look at it and then look at, coming up with, these are the things that were not working, and these were some things that potentially could work,
I can
and
do
come
that.
back with a plan. Do you want to do that?
Sure, I'll do it.
Okay.
Since
Um,
I'm learning.
do we have any public comments, Logan? Any hands raised?
No, thanks.
We have public comment in the room. Yes, Mr. Morante?
How do you know what was, man? In disguise. What Jason said, the businesses, that's a turnover. But, right now, residentially, right, if you put something in place, it's not just a planning board that's gonna have the knowledge. The new developments have, right now, the developer knows there's no parking,
Mhm.
but, so any new development, especially residential. Now,
Yeah.
right now, right, I don't know where we are with our properties, but, I know at least 3 properties, right, in the city that probably could be, parking lots. That bar is gonna be inherent, right? And it would be, there's one on Washington, Street, one on Columbia Street, and that's a spread out parking. Especially, for the residential side of it. So I think that putting, a tool in place, for the parking is very important, especially when you talk about residential. Now, a lot of times, like something like Bliss, right? They're going for tax, they won't pay for that. Their the tax credit will not pay for parking, so that's gonna be, money for the developers gonna have to put in, anytime. That's one of the things with Heroes, that was private money. So they negotiated very well for that parking, but there was no, resistance because of the code or the state, but I think it's a tool, it's definitely needed, just can't, the last, residential. To think that a residential of that big, 70-something units, is only off-site parking. That's amazing to me, how that's even, part of that. And the parking that is for there, I think it's only 30 units. The tenant's gotta pay like $80 a month to park there. So, if we're gonna be parking, we need to see what's available.
Which development are you talking about?
What?
Which development are you talking about? Where it's 30?
The laws.
No, that's not correct, that's not correct.
It's $150.
It's $150 a month.
I'm sorry. Oh,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I didn't-
it's double.
Okay.
It's a hundred-
Wow, it's
It's $150 and it's not right there.
No, absolutely not, it's still, I still walk, yeah.
Yes.
It's not that bad a walk, but it's a walk.
I don't know how we would do this, but if we're serious about not building more parking, perhaps we need to look at the overnight opposite side issue. That would be complicated, but there's a lot of parking that could be done overnight if it was both sides of the street.
You can take that on, Jason.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think it'll happen, but if we got that dense, at some point that might have to happen.
It would be good. I like your thinking, but
Okay, so on this one, you're gonna do some more work on
Yeah.
what it was before,
Yeah.
what worked, what didn't work.
right.
No hands raised online,
I can work with her on that, Jenny.
Okay,
sorry.
I told Jenny I have to work with her on
I'll pull it out
Okay.
and send it.
Mr. Morante, any more public comments
About parking?
about anything?
Oh, yeah, I got a lot of comments. Oh, maybe about light or what? So.
No, not about life.
Okay, so I want to try to think seriously how we can amend the sidewalk law. I think we're missing it for emergency repairs. And there's some properties like the hospital, I mean, that's not part of, the, replacement, so, and if something like that, we need to re-add charter in terms of putting it into DPW's hands again, or its code for violations for emergency. Because otherwise, we're talking about 3 to 5 years possibly, to complete the sidewalks. And they're only gonna get worse. I mean, if they're gonna be bad now, they're just in 3 to 5 years, that sidewalk's just gonna get worse. They don't heal themselves. So I think we need to put back an amendment. I don't think, it's definitely not gonna change anything with the DOJ. Because we're addressing an emergency regarding sidewalks. We're not taking away the sidewalk district sidewalk plan, but we need a mechanism to have these emergency repairs done for some of these sidewalks. Some of these sidewalks are gonna just wait, they wash their hands of it, like for comments like from landlords, and we don't have to do anything, the city's gonna repair it. That's
I will take that on. I will, take the sidewalk law and take it apart and, talk to you and see how we could define the ones that are critical that need work.
Yeah, no, again, I wonder, like I said, the hospital, if it was bad, they had a couple of bad spots, what would be the motivation to fix them?
Yeah.
Could we incentivize them?
Do I?
You know, well, we do give credit for,
Correct, there's a mechanism to give credit for any repairs, emergency repairs, absolutely. So it's not like we're gonna double charge them. They're gonna get credit for that repair. And if they
Yeah.
don't do it, if it goes down where the city has to do it, well, then it goes on their property tax, right?
So Jason, when that law was being drafted, it somehow kind of fell by the wayside. One of the ideas was that, the city would contract would have a contractor. And because of scale, would have a linear foot pricing that would be, very, very competitive compared to what a homeowner going out trying to get a contractor would be able to get.
Yeah.
And the idea was that, if you wanted to do a repair, you could piggyback on the city's contract with the contractor and get the city rate for your sidewalk.
Right.
And that somehow never made it through to the end.
Right.
But that was one of the things that we wanted to put in, so that if somebody was going to do, so you could have, you know, we're gonna work on things, but you can also, and I like the idea of identifying like really critical ones and saying,
Yeah, absolutely.
this has gotta be done. You're gonna get credit and, you know, you can work with our contractor or whatever, but I can look at that, Don, I can talk to you.
Right, thank you.
Great.
Any other new business? Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn? Second, motion is Claire, second is Denny. Thank you all very, very much. Have a good evening.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
All right.